As a family, this is the hardest thing we have ever had to do. Where do we begin? My name is Jim Tracey. I'm standing here with my brothers Jerry and Michael. Today we're here to celebrate and honor the life of our brother, Waltham Police Officer Paul Tracey. How do you capture in words, in just a few minutes, the life of a man who meant so much to so many? First and foremost, Paul was a good man. Paul was a tremendous husband to Kristen, his wife of 16 years, and the father of two beautiful children, Danica and Tyler. Kristen, Danica, and Tyler were the center of Paul's universe. Danica and Tyler, your dad loved you very much, and he was fiercely proud of both of you. Hockey, baseball, lacrosse, golf, it didn't matter what sport was being played. Paul was encouraging Danica and Tyler to play their best, to do their best. Two great kids, and you should be proud with how you raised them, Paul. Danica will always cherish the memory of Paul getting to take his very first concert tickets to go to Taylor Swift with her cousin Abby. She was also known by Esther. She also has reminded me that she's an awesome blackjack player, in which her dad honed her as a player, often taking lunch money from the fellow classmates and friends. And Tyler, who was, in Paul's Boston accent, Tyler, as Paul referred to him, he enjoyed going with his dad to the 99 restaurant, not the one in Waltham, though. The Four Corners location, as Tyler was able to sit at the bar with his dad, feeling like one of the big guys. Paul had a strong faith in God, the Catholic Church, and a special connection to Our Lady's Parish and Father de Perry. Paul was a patriot, and he loved the USA. 4th of July celebrations were the norm, and red, white, and blue were prominently displayed throughout the Tracey household in the yard. Paul lost his life in the line of duty, doing what he loved most, protecting and serving the citizens of Waltham, and he is leaving behind a great legacy for the rest of us to follow. So many lives were changed forever on the evening of December 6th. Unfortunately for us, this day will always be remembered as the day that the life of a great man was cut short, a law enforcement career that ended too soon, and a husband, father, brother, uncle, and godfather and friend who had so much more to give was taken from us. Paul Tracey is our hero. A hero is someone who faces danger, has integrity, bravery, and strength. That's what police officers do every day, performing responsibilities that most people do not want or cannot do. At a moment's notice, they are called into action to protect the community. Paul was an advocate of the underdog. He was unselfish with his time and resources. He used his work and personal time helping others, not because he was a police officer, but because he was a good man with compassion for others. Paul had many layers, as you know. He could sometimes come across as being gruff, but that was mostly an act, as he was very kind and considerate. Very early in their relationship, Kristen confided to Paul that she slept with a teddy bear. Paul, being that masculine alpha male, said he rushed right out to Build-A-Bear, where he had a teddy bear, a boy bear, you need to know that, made, and he had a heart sewn into the bear. That was the side of Paul that was not on full display for all to see, and to this day, Kristen still takes the boy bear on road trips. Throughout the family, Paul had numerous nicknames growing up: Waldo, Wallace, Pollywog, the Mayor, just to name a few. Nobody knows the origin of these nicknames, but they were still in use to this day. As many know, Paul had an infectious laugh and loved a good joke. His ability to make anyone laugh, no matter what the situation, was his best quality. We will miss the daily texts that we receive, his TikTok videos, his funny scenes from movies, comedies, TV shows. He absolutely loved comedy. For someone who's supposedly not on social media guy, he sure did find the time for that. Beach and vacation. Paul knew what was important to him, and he was happiest in the summer when school was out and team sports were limited as they could possibly be. One of the traditions was, since they were infants, Danica and Tyler were infants, was to head to the beach, spend time with the family. It didn't matter if he went north to York or South Yarmouth on the Cape. As long as there were things for cousins to do, he was happy. The adults could always figure out something to do, but cousins spending time together was primary. There were many visits to York Beach, the zoo, amusement park, the arcade, with an occasional lobster and ice cream cones to squeeze in. The same was true for South Yarmouth, where the Riviera Beach Resort was a destination for over 10 years. The same as York, as long as the cousins had something to do together, that was good enough. Mini golf, of course. Go-karts, check. Arcade, I think you know the answer there. Paul was the happiest spending time with his family, and anyone who has seen the picture boards that was created on display out here, you can see just how much these trips to the beach meant to Paul and everyone else who made the trek every year. Where would we be sitting? Very simple. Just look for the blue Easy Up canopy on the beach, American flag. They were proudly staked on the beach each morning at 7 a.m. He would have them up there. Paul was generous, and he took care of those who took care of his family. Upon arrival at these resorts, without fail, Paul would locate and identify key staff members, usually dressed like bartenders, who already knew him for the previous years. He would ensure that they would look after anyone who was with us for anything that was needed during the time that we were staying there. Again, very generous with the tips. For someone who enjoyed the beach as much as Paul did, he was cursed with the Irish tan. And most of the time he was red as a tomato, but somehow he never sunburned. Sunscreened? Never. That stuff will kill you, he told us. He enjoyed creating and testing new types of beach-related summer cocktails during our annual trips to South Yarmouth. Cannonball coming. Paul loved Jimmy Buffett, and he and Kristen thoroughly enjoyed the Buffett experience. They created cherished memories of many concerts attended together. No matter where he was or what time, it was always 5 o'clock somewhere. Even while vacationing, he was still in a position to be able to help people. In 2018, while relaxing on the beach, Paul, with the assistance from cousin Cindy, performed CPR and saved the life of a woman who went to cardiac arrest on Riviera Beach. That was Paul. And you got the prankster Paul. Our dad, Hubie Tracey, he was also a prankster. Our brothers and sisters often say, Paul is just like Dad. Well, the apple obviously didn't fall far from the tree. Just a few of Paul's gags. Sending a sibling to the gas station to get winter air for their tires and having that unnamed sibling take the bait, believing the car really needed winter air. Over the years, Paul would go out to restaurants, bars, also on vacation in Germany. While meeting new people, he would often introduce himself as Tony Mealy. Will the real Tony Mealy please stand? When he would have a summer barbecue on a sweltering 95-degree day in July, don't be surprised if Paul would leave you a gift, strategically placed under the driver's seat of your car or the glove box. One of Tyler's or Danica's soiled diapers gets right after a few days. Or congratulating the spouse of a relative on their husband winning a $10,000 scratch ticket. Where's he taking you on vacation, he would say. There was no scratch ticket. On a few occasions while at the beach, Paul would put French fries on people who were asleep in their beach chairs. Have you ever seen a seagull going after food at the beach? Absolutely hilarious to see them wake up being attacked. Restaurant. Paul loved food. Ruth Chris's, Giacomo's, Captain Parker's were just a few of the places that he loved to go, because there's always a lot of people to be seen. The more crowded, the better. He loved the crowds. But his favorite restaurant was Bob and Sid's on Crestview. 5-star restaurant, great service, and the best bartender. Our extended family, our family grew up very close to our cousins, and our family spent a lot of time together, as you know. The cousins still get together, in many cases with their extended families, every year for our annual Yankee swap. This is a family-centric event and always been something to look forward to in the middle of December. This year, Paul, Kristen, and Danica and Tyler were scheduled to host, and Paul was so looking forward to this. Taken away. We shared many stories and laughs at these annual gatherings. Great memories were created. Paul's gifts were the best. As usual, a funny gag gift which would embarrass some family member who got it, but also with plenty of scratch tickets in it. Again, very generous. Paul was very, very famous for his polite Irish exits at parties and functions. He'd always text you shortly after his leaving, letting people know that he had a great time and appreciate it. Again, that was Paul. Friends and family. There's family, and then there's Paul Brasco and Bob Leslie, who were Paul's non-biological brothers. They were neighbors by definition, but they were much more than that. They were the best of friends and spent many an hour moving printers, fridges, tables, moving anything that could get them together for a few getaway minutes to go to Encore or Foxwoods for a smash and grab. In and out. They had something that most people never experienced, and they knew it. Paul was lucky to have them both, and they were lucky to have Paul. The 4th of July parties out Crestview Road, hosted by Paul, Bob, and Paulie B, were epic. Barbecue, Jimmy Buffett, and dozens of families attended each year, were capped off with a fireworks display rivaled by those of the surrounding towns. Each year was better than last. When Paul was younger, he worked at Star Market, and it was here where he started getting to know and establish relationships that continue to this day. He loved the Star. At Star, he was in his element, interacting with the helping people, acquiring the nickname of that's where he got, the mayor. We firmly believe that working with people at Star inspired him to continue to serve the community, becoming a police officer. And the compassionate Paul. Paul had another family that was dear to him. The law enforcement community meant the world to Paul. He was very passionate about doing what was right by those who served in the past and those who are currently serving. The law enforcement community is a very real brotherhood, and Paul proudly embraced being a part of it, caring for people. Paul would work every super holiday. He would go in early so other officers could go home and be with their families. Another many examples of his caring and compassion for others was recently shared to us by Maureen Richards, widow of retired Waltham police officer Ray Richard. Paul visited with Ray daily and assisted Maureen in getting Ray to take his medication. Paul was the only one who could get this done. He would visit Ray when he was working, when he wasn't working, day or night. Paul brought Tyler with him and showed firsthand what compassion is. These are the words that Maureen used to describe Paul, a godsend. I don't know if I would have made it without him. Ray proudly took his badge out of his wallet to show Paul during every visit. Maureen stated, the only word needed on Paul's headstone is kindness. When Ray was nearing the end, Paul stood at the foot of the bed and said to Ray, "Ray, your shift is over. Turn in your keys." After Ray passed, Paul came home to visit Maureen, taking her out to lunch, would call to check in on her daily. He last called Maureen 2 days before he passed. This was Paul. Jack Dempsey was another example of Paul's huge heart. Like Ray, Paul would visit Jack daily, bringing coffee and a donut and doing everything that he could to ensure that Jack's needs were being met with dignity. This was done under the radar, as very much appreciated by Jack's family. Paul visited with Jack and gave him his last shave the day before the accident. Jack passed 2 days after Paul. Paul was never shy with words, but if he was here to see this turnout today, for the first time in his life, he would be speechless. He also would have been in his element, sitting right here in the middle of this sea of blue. No questions asked, just like you, because it was the right thing to do. To law enforcement community, inside and out, the church today, and for the many, many who have reached out to the Tracey family, thank you for all your support for being here for Paul and his family. Your support is appreciated more than you could ever know. Today, we say goodbye to Paul, but we will never let him go. He will no longer be with us, but he will live in our hearts forever, and Paul will never be forgotten. Paul, your shift is over. Turn in your key. Thank you.
From Paul's family, fellow officers, let us support our support.